Alright guys, as promised, I have my part 2 of my PS3 collection, worst to first. Through my first video, I covered some of the games that wouldn't be appearing on this list. Man. Either because they're collections of PS2 games, or maybe they're sports games, a yearly franchise. I did include Call of Duty, even though it kind of fits into that criteria, just because it's such a, kind of considered a hardcore gamer's game more so than, like, say, Madden is. And, like, Mass Effect 3, that would have really, or Mass Effect series, I guess, 2 is my favorite. But that would have placed really high on my list, but I own it for PC. So I'm not going to include it because I don't own it for my PS3. And this is more of a video to show off, my collection, what I've got, to talk about the games I have in my PS3 collection, and then show you which ones are my favorites in that console collection. Not just which games this gen are my favorite in general. So, yeah, that being the case, I guess we go ahead and get started here. This is part 2. Like I said, we're picking up from where I left off with the last one, which was... Man, what was that? With like Assassin's Creed 2 or something? Anyway, either way, if you want to see the first part, check out my channel. It's probably in there. I'll see if I could put a video response or in a link down below. But if not, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Anyway, alright, let's go ahead and get started. First up I have Sleeping Dogs, and it makes it right in the middle of the pack. I did rank it higher than games, say, like Mafia 2 and GTA 4. I was kind of surprised about how much I really enjoyed this game. The Hong Kong setting really pulled me in, and I just like that Eastern style. Well, I don't like Eastern influence mechanics in games, or like anime style so much, but I love Eastern culture. And I like to see that in games, whether it be ancient or modern, like Sleeping Dogs or Jade Empire. I love it. It's good stuff. And exploring Hong Kong was a blast in this game. And they did give you a lot of stuff to do. The only reason it didn't rank a little higher on my list is because there are points in the game where you feel like, alright, say the last 10% or so of the main story feels rushed. It really boiled down to this point where you thought you were going to be able to make a choice between being a cop and a gangster, and it didn't end up being like that, and that was a huge missed opportunity. I think they really dropped the ball on that one. And there's other parts in the game, like trying to form relationships with some of the women, the female characters in the game. They just feel unfinished. Like, sometimes I would be left wondering why I didn't get a call from her, or why I'm not able to call her or go on a date with her, when in reality it's not my fault at all. It's just because the game is pretty much unfinished. And it's sad to say, because some of those dates and those things you could do with the girls and stuff, it was really well done and thoughtful. And it's just unfortunate that the game, it kind of went through a rough development cycle. It got pushed onto another developer. So for that reason, I guess it was rushed and pushed out on the market as soon as possible. So it could have been more than it is, but as it stands, it's still a great game. Alright, next up I've got Tomb Raider. Well, it got really good scores. People liked it a lot. I think it tried too hard to be something that it's not, rather than being its own thing. I understand why they would take so many influences from Uncharted, but I feel like this game lacks a lot of the substance that makes Uncharted so good. Oh, and also a lot of the character. The story itself was okay, but the character development beyond Laura, it wasn't so good. And even Laura's character is a bit stoic and just like, I don't know, she's just not very personable. When you compare it to characters, say, in like Uncharted, you can see a huge gap between the way these characters are written in this game and that game. But the action and the set pieces were really well done. I just feel like for everything they did right, they just didn't do enough of that. Whereas Uncharted, when they do something, they put a lot of it in. So several times through the game, it left me wanting more. They had some really good ideas in this game, and some ideas that other games have been really trying to steal from it. like non-sticky cover, just automatically ducking behind a piece of cover when you walk up to it during combat instead of having to push a button and stick to it. It just works. It works really well, and that is a thing I hope we see a lot of from the our upcoming third-person action games like this. But this is just more or less an example of Uncharted's influence than anything else. They tried as hard as they could to match or compete with it, maybe even surpass in some ways, but it's just not quite there yet. Maybe in the sequel it will be. We just have to see. Alright, next up we got God of War Ascension. Now, I like this game a lot more than some other people did. It got lower scores than I would have personally given it. To me, it's very much just a God of War game, by-the-numbers God of War game. And while to some people that may sound bad, to me it's awesome, because God of War is a great series, and they had a lot of cool environments, and a lot of really neat places, and, you know, Greek mythology for you to explore. They had some new items. They had the elemental magic, I guess you could call it, on your weapons. Instead of giving you different weapons, they give you a different elemental charge, I guess, to your normal blades. That was questionable decision, I think, but nonetheless, it does give this game a unique flavor. It did have some fun puzzles, and there were some times in this game where it would really challenge you as a God of War player. So it's a by-the-numbers God of War game, and if you don't like God of War, you won't like it, but if you do, you'll like it. Like, what else is there to say? They don't take many risks, but with a series like this, you almost don't even need to. The graphics are so good, the production value is so good, the controls are so tight, the boss fights are so fun, you know. Now, the characterization of Kratos has always been kind of subpar, but they know that it is, you know, because Kratos is what he is, and they don't try to make him, you know, some deep character, you know. But nonetheless, it's still a great game. I wouldn't quite put it on the same level as God of War 3, but it's still an awesome game. It's a by-the-numbers, like I said, by-the-numbers God of War. Some people feel like it was a cash-in, but it's a full, fun game. Like, you're going to get your 12 hours or whatever of enjoyment out of it. And while it might not be as groundbreaking as God of War 3 was when it came out, it's more God of War. What's not to love? Alright, next we have Rayman Origins. Probably my favorite platforming game on the PlayStation 3. I think this is probably the best platformer I've played all gen except for probably the Mario Galaxy games, now that I've really been getting into those. I think if new Super Mario Brothers wants to compete, they got to take some ideas here, man, because Rayman Origins is probably a better game than the Mario series is now. At least the 2D Mario, the new series. So, I mean, this is a tier 1 2D platformer. At least pure platformer, not like Metroidvania style or anything. But as far as pure platformers go in the 2D format, you can't get any better than Rayman Origins. And part of the reason that is just because of the art style and the fun that the developers just had making this game. You can totally see there's a lot of soul in this game, and they really put hard work into it, and it shows. It's a really fluid and fun platforming game. Now, what could make this better is if the sequel, Rayman Legends, I think it's called, am I right? They don't put as many trial and error levels in there. There was a lot of stages in this game where it felt as though it was trial and error. You had to go through and figure out what the level was and then keep getting a little bit further and further and further and having to keep start over till you memorize the whole board and then complete it. There are levels like that where you need to be that accurate in order to complete it. And I think they do have a good idea in Legends where they have these jumps and attacks and things you need to do at the right time corresponding to the music. They'll put a musical tone in there, and you'll know when it's coming because you know how music has a repetitious tone to it. You'll know when to do certain things based on the music, and I think that's an awesome idea. It just goes to, you know, you got to give credit to the devs there. I don't even know if I would have thought of something that cool. So it kind of blends rhythm gaming with a platforming with the platforming genre. So I mean, man, this game can only get better from here, and I love it as it is already. All right, next up we got Uncharted 1. I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted series. I'm not going to deny that. I think Uncharted are some of the best games on the PS3. You'll have to wait to see what I rank the other ones. But yeah, Uncharted 1 is the lowest on the list by far. It was like their beta test to see what Uncharted is and what it could be. They wanted to see what they could do with the PS3. They just built a new engine. They weren't sure what they could do with it. They were still getting a lot of their ideas together for set pieces. And I believe this was a different team that made this one as compared to Uncharted 2. So it's kind of just like like Borderlands in a way, where it's the beta test for the eventual blockbuster. You know, like. It's a good game on its own, right? Now it was considered the game to own on the PS3 for a while, and I could still go back and enjoy it, but it's not quite on the level that Uncharted 2 and 3 are, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly why that is, but if you played it, I think you would know. Alright, next up we've got Mortal Kombat. This is the highest ranking fighting game that I own on this list here. And there's not a whole lot to say about it. If you haven't heard of Mortal Kombat, then like, why are you even watching these videos? Yeah, like, you're watching gaming videos on YouTube and you haven't heard of Mortal Kombat. Basically, this is a throwback reboot game. It takes it back to the 2D plane. It's like... The characters are still fully rendered in 3D, but it's on a 2D plane like the classic Mortal Kombats, and because of that, it's the best Mortal Kombat game to date. Plus, this fighting game is just bursting at the seams with content, and like it's going to be a long time before you run out of things to do in it. And couple that with one of the best fighting systems in a traditional fighter I've ever seen. You've got a great fighting game. Plus, I just love Mortal Kombat. Always have. Next up, I have Deus Ex. I was really surprised as to how much I really enjoyed this game. I think this is the first game to really do that modern stealth genre right. Like, what I mean by modern stealth is not so much Metal Gear, not so much Splinter Cell, but like a stealth game where you get to choose different paths, and find certain secret routes out, or you could just take an aggressive route, or you could sneak around them, use certain powers like invisibility, see through walls, and stuff like that. It gives you an option in every scenario and gives you a lot of gadgets, and you can tackle any scenario the way you want. And I feel like a lot of games have been taking this route lately. You've got Dishonored and Metro that immediately come to mind. Even the new Splinter Cell is going to allow you to choose whether you want to play more aggressively or more stealthy. And traditionally, stealth games were all about stealth. If you bought a stealth game, that's what you would be doing. And this game gives you that option. I think it's the first game to really at least do it right. And couple that with an awesome Mass Effect cyberpunk look to it. It's kind of got a noir look to it. It's never daytime in Deus Ex. And also, this game has possibly the best soundtrack I've ever heard in a game. That cyberpunk theme music that they use, it has kind of a Mass Effect feel to it, but it's a little bit better in this. The soundtrack is phenomenal. And yeah, it's just a really, really good game. You have dialogue branches much like you do in Mass Effect. They're not as as established and developed as the dialogue branches, say in like KOTOR or Mass Effect or The Walking Dead, but they are there and they're pretty darn good. They're really close, and that makes it the game's world really fun to explore, and the characters really fun to meet, is because you can have these interactions with them. And then on top of that, you've got this great deep gameplay system, RPG FPS mixture with stealth, with a stealth focus. It has it all. And when a Deus Ex game gets announced, people's imaginations go wild, you know. And for that, this is a great series and a worthy game of the series. So yeah, it's a great game. Next up, man, did I really rank this high? I probably should have put Deus Ex first, or ahead of this. We have Metal Gear Solid 4. I do, I do really love this game. It's got man, somebody there. Anyway, it's a traditional. I shouldn't say that. It's a Metal Gear Solid game. It's a little less traditional than say Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. It takes the third person camera from Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, not Snake Eater, Subsistence, and it changes it up in that kind of way. So it plays like the camera is situated more like a Splinter Cell game than a traditional Metal Gear Solid game. The problem I have with this game is because I haven't really played a whole lot of the other ones in the series, I was a little bit lost. But the reason I still ranked it this high is because it is a really fun game, gameplay-wise, and it just works as a stealth game. It's got a lot of cool Easter eggs and fun stuff that you can do in it. It's just a really enjoyable stealth game, and everything works, just works for this series. The cutscenes, while I admit to being lost a little bit in the story, they just have some really cool cutscenes. That's what this game is almost all about, too, is if you enjoy like movie and game hybrids, this game will be for you, because the cutscenes they have in this are just over-the-top awesome. And it's one of those things that just it makes this game a spectacle. That is also to its own detriment, though, too, because these cutscenes, I've heard a statement one time that the game is this long with cutscenes, this long without, you know, so yeah, while there's not as much game to it as you would like, maybe, the cutscenes are really enjoyable, but they do tend to drag on, especially from someone that doesn't know the series very well. I feel like there was definitely a lot of fan service in this, but what can you say? I mean, it is still a really, really good game, and Metal Gear Solid games have always been really good, and I was able to appreciate even the elements that I didn't fully understand because I know what Metal Gear is. Like, I was able to appreciate it on some level, even though I haven't played the others and I was a little bit lost at some points. I was still able to appreciate why they're there and what their purpose is. So it's still a really, really good game, don't get me wrong. Alright, next up we have Dragon Age Origins. It's a BioWare game. It's a BioWare game, and it's an RPG. It's heavier in RPG elements probably than any of their other more recent games. The ones I'm thinking of, let's see, it's a more RPG mechanic heavy than KOTOR, more RPG heavy than Jade Empire, more heavy than Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3, and that's what this game is. It's a fantasy-style RPG, very Lord of the Rings inspired. And the mechanics, the RPG mechanics in it are very heavy-handed. Unlike Mass Effect and like KOTOR, like Jade Empire, they're not like action game RPG hybrids. There's a lot of RPG content in this game, and for pen and paper fans, that's perfect, because what it is like that D&D style game. And BioWare is almost perfect for that style because it gives you these really deep narrative branches. And as far as narrative branches go in a BioWare game, this is probably the best one. They're really long conversations, really deep. And what you read is what your character actually says, even though your character does not have voice acting, like in Mass Effect. You actually know what you're going to say when you pick it, whereas in Mass Effect 3, you may pick one thing, but when it comes out of Shepard's mouth, it sounds like another. So, yeah, it's just got... Think of Dungeons & Dragons in a video game form, done really, really, really well, and you have Dragon Age. Now, I played both versions, both the console and the PC versions, And this is probably one of the biggest differences I've seen between two versions of a game like that in the modern or in this console generation. The PC version is very much harder. Plays very much more like a pen and paper game than like this. This game leans a little more towards the action, accessibility, console friendly framework, but it's still really, really heavy in RPG mechanics and elements. Although the PC version is probably even heavier. It's a fun game, man. You're gonna see some really cool things and meet some really cool people. If you love the fantasy setting, you love Lord of the Rings, and you like that really heavy RPG content, really long, deep, and thought-provoking games with decisions that are really tough to make, that you don't know which one is right or wrong, then this game is going to be a good choice for you. Now, I didn't know where to rank this on the list. It's a little bit hard because I'm comparing it to mostly single-player experiences, or games that are about 50-50, where you can play single-player and multiplayer, and their focus is balanced between the two. Whereas this game is, let's be honest, it's a multiplayer game. But the reason I ranked it so high is because its multiplayer is such high production quality or production value that it almost feels like a single player game. And I've never seen that achieved so well as it has been in this game. So when I do boot up multiplayer and I play it, I feel as though I'm getting as rich an experience as I do from a lot of single player games, and that's very rare. They really struck gold with this game's multiplayer mode, and it's so competitively relevant. You could research guns and strategies and vehicles and everything. You could research this game for days and not find everything out. So it's just a really deep multiplayer experience that has nice big maps. It's everything Call of Duty isn't, and it's just more of a hardcore gamer's game than Call of Duty, and it's far less arcade. It's far more strategic. But if you wanted to hop in and play, you could find a team deathmatch just to kill each other without vehicles, without all the nonsense. You could find that in this game too. So it's not to say it doesn't have that, more fast-paced shooter style. You can find everything in this game, whether you just want to fight with vehicles, you just want to fight people, ground to ground, if you want a conquest where you take over points on a map, if you want to assault the enemy's base, and man, the assault mode, which is actually called rush mode, is so good. Like, you'll be parachuting down cliffs to assault some guy's base down on the ground, and they'll be trying to snipe you out of the air, and man, it's just so good. Like, you get that single player quality in the multiplayer experience, so I just love it, man. I don't really play a whole lot of multiplayer games, but when I do, I play Battlefield 3. Next up, I have The Walking Dead. I had kind of trouble ranking this game because it is such a blend of movie and game. Like, it's like an interactive. What are they calling it these? What are the cool kids calling it these days? Interactive, interactive drama or interactive something or the other. Basically, an interactive movie. Yeah, there is some game to it where you walk around and explore, but it's so. It's just there's not a whole lot to it. Mostly what this game is about is narrative branches, making decisions, and really hard ones, and seeing how the plot evolves around the decisions that you make. It was split up into episodic content. It's split up into episodes. So there's 5 episodes that make up this season, and a lot of people loved that about the game. I personally feel like I would rather play each episode back to back to back so that I don't forget a lot of the story and I'm able to stay into the game. But a lot of people loved how this game was split up, in an episodic format. And it is very much The Walking Dead. If you watch the TV show, then you have enough skill to play this game. That's about all there is to it. It's very much a video game TV show hybrid, much more than say Metal Gear, because it's almost all like watching something. Yeah, there is choices to make, but it's about you're just pressing up, down, left, or right usually just to say a certain set piece of dialogue, rather than you are controlling a character trying to take out zombies and stuff like that. But that's not to say this isn't an awesome game. Much like the Walking Dead TV show, it's just got a lot of shocking moments in it that'll, maybe you'll be a little tear-jerked, or maybe you'll just be shocked with your jaw on the ground. It's just got a lot of really cool story stuff in it, and I feel like the game actually takes some risks that the show didn't even do. So for that reason, it's a really, really great game, and a really great narrative-driven experience. And if you love the show, then there's no reason why you wouldn't play the game. I would almost say the game's even better. So, yeah, The Walking Dead. Next up, we have Portal 2. Now, this one, it's a Valve game. And Valve they're freaking geniuses, man. They're like the mad scientists of video games. And it's a puzzle game primarily. It's played in the first-person point of view, and you have a portal gun. So you shoot one portal here and one portal here, and if you enter this one, you come out of this one, and if you enter this one, you come out of this one. And there's interesting puzzles and mechanics surrounding these portals, especially wrapping your head around the building of momentum. If you enter, say, portal. This camera's weird. Say you come out a portal here from a wall, and you enter a portal here in the ground. So you're like coming out here, entering here, then you you shoot out even further, and then you shoot another portal in midair, and you'd come out even further. So like you have to build up momentum for certain puzzles like that. And I feel like that is a cool idea. And they have a lot of little things like that where you have to use gravity, momentum, and physics because of the Source engine. You know how Valve loves their physics. You have to use your physics to your advantage. And the portals just play so well into that. Plus, the game actually ties into the Half-Life universe. Valve has pretty much confirmed that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So, if you want to get the full experience of Half-Life, then Portal's the game to get. Plus, on its own, it's just a good game. The characters are a lot more fleshed out and well written than they were in Portal 1, and Valve just knows, man. They just know. They know what makes a good game, and this is another one of them. Alright, next up, we have Heavy Rain. Pretty much a lot of what I said about The Walking Dead is true for this game. I don't want to go too deep into detail about it, but it's kind of like a thriller, crime mystery. What do you call it? It's like kind of like CSI or something in a video game, but your point of view is spread across 4 different characters, and you get to see how their stories build up and intertwine through this one overarching narrative, and it's all about a murder or a kidnapping. And throughout the course of the story, you're trying to figure out the kidnapper, and it's just a big mystery, and you're trying to piece it all together in your head and stuff like that. Like I said with The Walking Dead, it's more of a movie or a show than a game. It's all about narrative branches. And what's cool about this one, and why I ranked it higher, is that there is no game overs. You cannot just die and the game ends and you have to reload. If you die, your character's dead. Move on to the next one. Like it'll change the whole course of the game. And man, there's just so many intense moments. Like, as far as intensity goes, this is probably one of the most intense games I've ever played. And man, some of the moments in this game just make you just it just gives you like, you see it and you're just like, oh man, I don't know, I can't even watch that again. It's so fucked up. Like, it's just one of those games that really, really shocks you in a special way, and it really hits home, and it's just a really, really good game. But if you want a game with a lot of gameplay to it, a lot of gamey mechanics to it, then this isn't the game for you. But if you love characterization, story, atmosphere, then this is your game right here, buddy. All right, next up we got Metro Last Light. I would have given this a higher score than a lot of reviewers did. A lot of them were like, well, 7, 8, or 8, 8.5, 8.75, stuff like that. Some of them gave it 9s. I would have probably given it a 9, but I feel like it at least deserves a 9. But I couldn't imagine giving it any lower than that. Any higher than that, it might be a stretch. So I think 9 fits this game perfectly. It should be a 9, like out of 10, of course. And it's one of those games that focuses on characterization and atmosphere. It's all about the atmosphere in this game. Much like Deus Ex, it's got the stealth and the action, choice. Every encounter you have with at least human beings, you could choose either to take the stealthy route or the full assault route, where you just go around and shoot everybody. Yeah, the combat isn't necessarily what makes this game so great. It's the atmosphere and some of the little mechanics that gives this game charm that other games don't have. Like, say you're crawling through some deserted area of the metro tunnels in this post-apocalyptic world, and there's a lot of these, post-nuclear Holocaust world, I should say. And there's all these mutated creatures down in the metro system that want to mess you up. And if you shine bright lights on them, they won't attack you. They'll get scared. And what you have to do is charge up your light. Like you're cranking it up to make sure it stays charged. And while you're trying to kill these ugliest creatures you'd ever see, that give you creepy crawlies, on the back of your neck or whatever. You got to keep your light charged, otherwise they'll just come in and mess you up. So it's so intense, and it's got that atmosphere. And much like Deus Ex as well, it's like a noir style and game, and it has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. So if you love atmosphere in games, love story, then this is a great game for you. Gameplay wise, it's similar to Deus Ex without a lot of the powers and gadgets, but it does have some of that stuff too. So it's a really, really fun game, and it's actually my desktop background right now. I love this game. I think it deserved a little bit more praise than it got. And it would be a nominee. If I had to choose 3 nominees for Game of the Year so far, this would be one of them. Put it that way. All right, moving on. Man, this video is getting a little bit longer than I would have liked, so I'm going to do this last game, and then I'm going to have a part 3. I plan to do it all right now, but it's going on 35 minutes long, so I'm going to have a part 3. But I'm going to do one more for you. All right, next up was actually the God of War saga, but mostly here I'm talking about God of War 3. Much like Ascension, it's a God of War game, but when they brought it to the PS3, we weren't sure if it would translate well and be the same great game series that we knew on the PS2. And man, I think they just upped the ante in every possible way. If you ask a lot of God of War fans what their favorite game in the series is, a lot of them will tell you 1 or 2, but I would tell you 3, because just the fights with the gods, the different gods like Poseidon, Hades, you got Hermes, there's Zeus, whatever. They're over the top awesome. Like, you've never seen action scenes quite like this. Well, besides one other game maybe. But like, what makes this game so over the top is the visuals are just like, it goes to show that the PS3 has it where it counts. If somebody wanted to make a great looking game on the PS3 hardware, then you look no further than God of War. Killzone also accomplished this, but God of War has the really, really good gameplay. Those tight fighting mechanics for its gameplay that just can't be matched elsewhere. And you know how many games try to come out and clone the God of War formula, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't have the magic that God of War does. Well, that's a credit to the series, man. Nobody can make God of War like the guys that make God of War. I think it's Sony Santa Monica, by the way. Yeah, it's got this great ancient Greek mythology atmosphere to it. And I felt like this game was a little bit darker than 1 and 2. And it just had a better story and a more epic scale in general than the previous games in the series. My stepbrother argues, and my other friend that likes God of War argue that they prefer God of War 2 or 1 because it has a little bit of the smaller Greek mythology. What do you call them? It has little smaller references to smaller, not to be redundant, Greek mythology things in it, and that you may not have heard of before. Whereas this has just like a lot of the major stuff like Hermes, Zeus, Ares. Well, Ares already died, but it does mention him in the game. I already said Hermes. What's the guy? Hades, Poseidon. It has a lot of the major gods in it, and going through and killing them all, that was awesome to me. Screw all the little stuff. I want to kill the big motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? And man, it was just a great game. I don't know how else to explain it, but nobody can do a God of War style game as good as God of War. I mean, they've come close, but they just aren't quite there yet. And for that, it is a great, great game. The fight with Hades, man, there's just nothing like it. And it just feels a little bit darker and of bigger scale than the previous ones, and it's probably my favorite of the series. And honestly, that's going to do it. Next video, we're going to get to the big boys. Let me see what we got up next. Oh yeah, we're getting to the big boys. We're getting to yup, we got 10 games left. So these are my top 10 games for the PS3, worst to first. Next video, hopefully I'll be able to do it pretty soon. But until then, hopefully you guys are satisfied with this. I burned through probably 10, well, over 10, probably close to 14 or 15 games in this video, and I gave them a little more commentary than I probably should have. The video has dragged on a little bit, but with that being said, I don't want to drag it on any further, so please don't forget to rate, comment, or subscribe, and thanks for watching, guys. Peace.